We have Commish on the line. Before we let you go, Cam Jansen, and Commish, welcome to the program. Great to have you. We got to ask you because I thought you were a Kirkwood guy. Cam said you moved out near him in St. Albans. Is that true?
That is correct. I was living in Kirkwood. We were living in Kirkwood for about, 7 years, I guess. And my wife wanted to go out to the country here, and we found the least expensive property out here, and here we are.
Isn't it lovely out there, Commish? I mean, my goodness gracious, you got that beautiful lake, you got the head store right there. When you drive out there, doesn't it just put a smile on your face?
Well, it does. It is a great country living, but you're not really that far in the country. You know, it is very beautiful. I mean, we moved out in the fall, and the winter was kind of grisly out here, I must admit.
Oh, yeah.
But now it's nice.
It was scary for a while there. Oh, yeah, that big day. One of those on Austin Ford, you can't go. If it's snowing, you're like, nah, I'm going to take a snow day today. I'm not going anywhere. That's the way it is.
There's lots of snow days in the wintertime here, yes.
Well, Commish, we're going to let Cam Jansen go, but you guys are going to have a barbecue or something.
Bye, neighbor. We'll see you
soon. All right, pal.
All right.
Right. Borrow a cup of sugar or help each other with raking leaves and different tools from the garage and all that.
I don't do leaves. No.
Cam says, you'll get the same person to hire for the leaves. So, Commish, thanks for joining us, talking a little baseball here. Cardinals, 12-11. Kind of treading water overall for the season, but a nice stretch, especially starting pitching-wise the last couple of weeks. What have you seen so far from the Redbirds?
Well, they've had those last 9 games, 2 runs or fewer from the starters, and the bullpen is, for the most part, has been really good. Reyes is 6 for 6. Gallegos was good again last night. Other guys have done pretty well. Cabrera's been good in the bullpen. So their pitching is coming around. You know, I've liked the way Martinez has thrown the ball all year long. I know his one-loss record didn't say much, but you look at the last 2 games he's pitched. He lost 1-0 to Scherzer last week. That could happen. And then he pitches last night. He allows 2 hits in 6 innings, and the only one of the 2 runs they scored was 2 errors, one by Williams and one by him. So I like what I've seen. I like what I saw in the spring. He's got 5 or 6 pitches. He's pitching the way he used to pitch when he was an all-star. I mean, can he do that consistently when he was an all-star? Well, we'll have to see. But there's a reason to be optimistic about him. And Waino is no closer to retirement than ever in the way he's throwing. Flaherty's 4-0. Kim threw pretty well. Gant's been good. Oviedo will be up for a couple starts. So they've got a lot going for them. And something that doesn't slump much is their defense. Well, it does in the outfield a little bit once in a while until you get Bader back. But the infield defense was quality last night, and that's going to be out there almost every night.
Yeah, and, starting pitching overall, the Cardinals obviously started the year out where after that one Daniel Ponce de Leon start, the starter's ERA was something like 6.5. And you knew they weren't going to be that bad. And that was just a small sample size type deal. And look, they've been fantastic for the last 10 starts, as you've said. I think there's going to be a little bit of regression to the mean, probably where they come to the middle a little bit. Overall, where do you think the starting pitching will be after 162?
The starting pitching is probably in the upper half of the league, not at the top, not 1 or 2 or 3. Because other than Flaherty, you don't know exactly if you have a strong number 2 guy for a whole season. It could be Wainwright, it could be Martinez, but you don't know that. Could have been Michaelis, still could be, I guess, but you can't really count on that either, or Kim. So you've got a 1, and you don't have really a 2. So that makes it tough when you go into some series. If you go into Milwaukee and take on Woodruff and Burns, they're a 1-2. Anybody with the Dodgers, they got 1, 2, 3. But in their division, there's nobody that has any better 1-2 than the Brewers, than the Cardinals do. Pittsburgh doesn't have that. Cincinnati really doesn't have that. And the Cubs are looking for 1, I think, let alone 1-2.
Yeah, absolutely. Tonight you got Phillies and Cardinals again. Vince Velasquez taking on Johan Oviedo for the Cardinals. I remember seeing a couple years ago at spring training Johan Oviedo, and even hearing John Mozeliak just saying that this guy is straight out of Central Casting with the fact that he looks like a starting pitcher. It's kind of funny. I was looking up his numbers, and on ESPN he's listed as 6'6", 210. I said, no, wait, that cannot be right. And I go to Baseball Reference, and he's 6'5", 245. He's definitely closer to 245. This guy's built like a horse who can be a guy who could log a bunch of innings as a starter. He at least looks the part. What do you think we can expect from Johan Oviedo tonight, and also if we see him more down the road?
Well, if they play, there's be a lot of rain coming in today, so I wouldn't be surprised if you saw Johan Oviedo if he pitching tomorrow. But if he does pitch tonight, he made 5 starts for him last year and was pretty good. He didn't win any of them, but he was pretty good. He's got all the material. He's got the pitches. He's got the little swagger about him. He's got the confidence. And I've heard enough people talk about him unsolicited, that makes me think this guy must really be something. You guys, the topic will be on somebody else, and somebody will say on Oviedo. They just kind of throw his name in there to keep the conversation going because that's how good he is. So I'm anxious to see him pitch whenever that might be.
And you mentioned earlier Adam Wainwright. I know Yadier Molina obviously goes on the injured list yesterday, but his hot start, especially offensively, does it ever surprise you that these guys, even if it's a couple years ago where you're thinking Waino could be on his way out and he may retire, that these guys, for going on 2 decades now, are still cornerstones for the Cardinals franchise?
Not really. No, they're smart guys. When they have to make adjustments, especially in Wainwright's case, he does. The other night, he's throwing up against a guy throwing 99 miles an hour, and Wainwright's throwing 89 miles an hour, maybe a couple 90s. And he's throwing his breaking ball, his curveball's coming in at 72, and this other guy's slider's coming in at 92. So there was no matchup there other than the fact that Wainwright's guile and his ability to just pitch kept that game 1-1 till the 9th inning, and he allowed a home run and lost 2-1. But whenever it was, 8th, whenever they got the last home run was in the 8th, I guess. But he can pitch. There's still room for pitching in this game. You don't see it very much. But Wainwright, every 5 days or every 6 days now, the way the Cardinals are doing, can give you that treat.
And, Commish, you're so great with the history of the game, covering the sport for so long. By the way, what year is this covering the Cardinals for you?
Well, I did my first game in 73. This will be the 49th season I've done some Cardinals games in one form or another.
Wow, that's amazing. So last night, and we know Nolan Arenado defensively is unbelievable. He's got 8 Gold Gloves in 8 seasons. He makes that play last night up the line in foul territory where he seemingly runs about 100 feet to get the ball. He's now in year 9. Where would you rank him, other guys that you've seen at third base, in terms of defensively at that position?
Well, they've had 4 great ones here. You start with Kenny Boyer back in the 60s, and then you go to the 80s, and Pendleton came along. He was an outstanding defensive player, and he was wonderful at going back on pop fouls, especially back to his infield, as Arenado was a little bit last night. And then Roland was spectacular. Roland and Arenado and Boyer are all built kind of the same. Pendleton was a little blockier. He wasn't, over 6 feet. These other guys were 6'3", 6'4", or 6'2" anyway, and 210, and can move. But Arenado is Roland and Boyer and maybe better. I don't know. I have to see him for a whole season to make that statement, but especially defensively, I don't know. I've seen anybody better than that, other than maybe Brooks Robinson on TV once in a while back in the 60s and 70s.
I'm glad you brought up Brooks Robinson because I have this tweet right in front of me from Buster Olney a couple days ago. We talked about this on the show, where Buster Olney is saying, Mike Trout's slash line in 2021, this is a couple days ago, 393 average, 521 on base, 804 slug, and about to pass names like this in career WAR: Paul Molitor, Ozzie Smith, Robin Yount, Brooks Robinson, Joe DiMaggio, and Pete Rose. And Trout is 29 years old. We all know that Mike Trout is amazing, but when I read that, it really made me think, oh my gosh, he's passing some of these guys and he's not 30 yet.
I know, and now their team is a little bit better, where you might actually see them playing in October once in a while. Trout's played like 2 games in October, or 3, I guess, and they lost them all to Kansas City that one year. So maybe with Rendon there for another season, and their pitching is better. Albert's got a little bit left in the tank, it looks like. Upton's a power hitter. Ohtani can do anything you want him to do on the same day. He can pitch, steal bases, hit home runs, all in the same game.
Absolutely. We've had some really exciting pitchers duels the last week or so, too, with the Cardinals and going against Zach Wheeler and the Phillies, and going back to last week, Carlos Martinez opposing Max Scherzer. And I'm kind of wondering your thought on just baseball overall. I know this is a big question, talking about the shift and balls put in play. I got another tweet here from Boog Shambi from ESPN about the MLB slash line being overall a 232 average, a 310 on base, a 390 slug, and the fact that this year balls in play is at about 35%. Do you think this is as much of a problem? Because we sure do talk about it a lot. How do you feel just about the state of baseball and excitement and trying to get young kids to watch the sport?
Well, I don't know where you draw the line with the shift. In the day, you'd have guys you might see the second baseman play behind the bag for a right-handed power hitter, or the shortstop behind the bag for a left-handed power hitter. You wouldn't see, an infielder playing in the outfield like these guys are doing now. But where do you say you can go, or where do you say you can't go? Just let them. I mean, it's up to the hitters to adjust. Every time you see a hit that goes where somebody is not playing, that means they've beaten the shift. The shift doesn't always work here, And the pitcher has to throw the ball where he's supposed to. Some guys, the players are lined up for him to throw a particular pitch, and he throws it somewhere else, and it's a base hit. So I'm okay with it. I mean, the hitters have to do something. They don't have to bunt every time, but they have to at least guide the ball. Look at Harper last night, got a hit. There were three guys on the right side of the field, and the second baseman, I think the shortstop and the right fielder and the first baseman on that one side, and he lifted a single over the heads of the first three guys.
Absolutely. We're talking with the commish, Rick Hummel from the Post-Dispatch here on the Charlie Marlow Show on 590 The Fan, 590thefan.com, live from Ryan Kelly's world headquarters in Brentwood. NL Central, we're only 22, 23 games in for most of these teams. Entering the year, the Cardinals were pretty heavy favorites in Vegas to win the Central, and it is early. I would say, though, the Brewers are better than I expected a little bit. They're in first right now. Cardinals just a couple games back. It's a smaller sample size, but how do you size up the division at this point?
Well, the Brewers have done better than I expected, considering they've had guys injured. I mean, Yelich is out. Kane's been out. You look at that lineup they're running out there now. It's not very imposing, but they're winning games. They've got a great two-pronged hammer at the end of the bullpen there with Hader and Williams, and they got some other guys ahead of them. But they're still a little thin in the rotation, and I think up front in the bullpen. And I don't like their offense very much. Their defense, when they have Wong and Kane playing, pretty good up the middle, and the shortstop's a pretty good player too. So I don't know, but they got Travis Shaw was virtually out of the game. He's batting fourth for them now, playing third base, and Narvaez, the catcher, bounced around a little bit, hitting third, and Vogelbach, who's it looks like he just came off the softball field somewhere, is hitting second, playing first base. That lineup doesn't scare me much, and they got some games with the Cardinals here in a couple weeks up there. That we'll see them again. But they've been pretty good. Cubs, you look at their lineup, you think they're going to score runs. They do. They score a bunch of runs, and like the Cardinals, they don't score any runs. Like they had none yesterday against Atlanta. Pittsburgh's a little better than I thought so far, and the Reds, I don't think have enough pitching.
And looking around the National League as a whole, we'll go to the West. It's been so fun to watch some of these nationally televised games, especially between the Dodgers and the Padres. But Dodgers in first or tied there in the West with the Giants. Do you think the Giants, are they a team that can actually hang around this season, or is this an early, hey, we're 15-9, but we'll probably fall off a little bit?
Well, you would think that's going to happen. Gabe Kapler must be doing a terrific job out there because they've got a really old lineup. They got... they're still playing with Belt and Posey and Crawford and the guys they've been playing with for years. They're on some of their championship teams 8-10 years ago. And I don't think those guys will be producing at this level all season long, but you don't know that. They've improved their pitching. I mean, Jake McGee is now closing games, and he couldn't do anything for Colorado when they had him. I'm impressed with how they're playing. I don't think they have enough depth to hang with the Dodgers or maybe even with the Padres. And Arizona's not a bad team either. That's a terrific division there. The Rockies are not very good, but those other four teams are pretty reputable clubs.
So terrific division in the West, at least so far. And you definitely can't say that about the National League East, which is starting to give us kind of NFC East NFL vibes right now with everybody around 500, Mets, and everybody else is a few games or one game under 500, with the Phillies obviously playing the Cardinals tonight if we don't have more rain. What have you seen from the East so far, Commish?
Well, I look at the standings, and I saw the Mets are in first place at 9-9. But every team in the East has got one or two terrific starting pitchers. Like DeGrom with the Mets is the best pitcher in the league. And in a 4-game series here that the Mets come in for next week, it's hard to believe the Cardinals would miss him 4 games. I haven't done the math on that, but I'm going to count him as one of the games he's going to be pitching. Washington's got Scherzer. Atlanta's got Fried. Miami's got Alcantara that pitched great against the Cardinals. The Phillies have Nola, and they have the guy the other night, Wheeler. So none of those teams have scored a lot of runs so far. I guess that's why they are where they are in the standings, and they played each other a little bit. But those teams have more good starting pitching than you think for records that they have.
And Commish, a final question for you. As you mentioned earlier, going on 50 years of covering the game, what's the last year and a half been like for you? It's great to see some fans in the stands. COVID last year with no fans was so weird, and being a guy who loves, I'm guessing, to be around clubhouses and interviewing guys in person. Now you have everything on Zoom. It's got to be quite the culture shock. It is for all media members, but how have you handled it? What do you think of this new Zoom world we're living in?
Well, I don't like it, but I understand. I understand that. I'm hopeful that now that we're making some considerable progress in this fight, that this is not going to be the case all year long. It sort of defeats your ingenuity. Like you could work the clubhouse. You could go get a guy that nobody else was talking to. The same way you would operate if you were in there. But now it's served up for you. You can ask for somebody to be at the Zoom, but they don't have to show up. And you're almost never going to get a guy who's had a bad night show up at the Zoom. They're going to say, "What? I'm not coming to that." But in the clubhouse, he's going to be sitting there. You get a chance to talk to him and ask him what happened.
Absolutely. Commish, appreciate the time. As always, we'll have to have a barbecue out there at your house or Cam's house, and we'll bring the food, and we'll have a good time out there.
Well, I believe Cam said he was hosting and raking his own leaves, too, I believe.
All right, done. We're going to hold him to that. Thanks, Commish.
You bet.
Appreciate the time. All right, that's Rick Hummel, the Commish, of course, with the Post-Dispatch, going on 50 years, as he said, covering the Cardinals and Major League Baseball.